the community is in trouble, a lot of trouble. There's a lot going on in the community. There's so much chaos and there's so much turmoil within the community. Once upon a time, the church was a strong fixture in the community when it came to social issues. They addressed a lot of different things, when the wrongs and the rights and everything like that. And people can go to the church and knew that they would find some type of help, some type of sanctuary from all of the chaos that was going on. Now, it doesn't seem like that's the case.
Right.
It seems like there's such a disconnect between the church and the community. And those pastors that I see, I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying those that I see only come out when there are major problems in the community, as far as like an incident might happen, the cameras come out, right. The pastors come out, they talking, oh, we're gonna do this, we're gonna march and all that. But then when the camera's gone, the pastors are gone.
Right.
Why is there such a disconnect between the church and the community, man? I just want to know.
Well, the reality is that in the school of thought, we call it an ontological dilemma, which means when a church has lost its identity, when you forgot your creed, your purpose, why you've come into existence, how can you represent that which you know nothing of? So the problem with most of the churches, or shall I say certain churches in today's time, is the fact that they're so caught up in practicing religion, they forgot what religion was all about. So the thing is, you get more caught up on religiosity, you get more caught up on what you do inside. You fail to realize that inside of the religious experience is supposed to prepare you for what you do outside. And therefore, some sociological things can cause the church to lose its identity. When money gets tight, the theology changes, the preaching changes. When the pastor wants to be a visionary, the preaching changes. So the thing is, it comes more about the internal church rather than the church being reminded that we're to serve a larger community. So the thing is, that's where the problem and the disconnect came in, and the church must understand, and particularly the black church must understand, that we were birthed out of a state of crisis. The black church was birthed in 1770. Silver Bluff, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia. The black church came into existence during the time of slavery. It was to fill a void that they were denied in their culture. We were still slaves until 1863. So the thing was, the church gave them something that society denied them. That was the birth of the church. And the church fails to realize that its purpose is to fill voids. What society denies, the church is supposed to fill that void. And until we're reminded of that, there will always be a disconnect in the church. And some of the second part that's causing a disconnect is the failure to identify with the culture. You can't give me a universalized God in the front of a bunch of black people. You just can't do it. You can't tell me that God is something other than me and expect me to follow that when I'm an emancipated people. You can't do that, because then there's a disconnect again. God doesn't look like me, doesn't reflect me. So therefore, you're putting people back into a chattel situation, whereas the church is supposed to give people a sense of identity, a sense of who you are. The church is supposed to identify with who and what you are. But now that they're practicing a more fundamentalist concept, whereas they're just going with this pie in the sky concept, with this whole, prosperity thing, the thing is that it's becoming a problem, because at the end of the day, people are still financially broke. People are still in a sense of crisis. AIDS is still running rampant in the community, and the churches are singing about God. Until God becomes real and until God becomes factual, there will always be a disconnect in the black community.
Now, I went to a church one time, and they had an ATM in the back. How does that make me feel? You know what I mean? Like, do you have an ATM in your church?
No, we don't. Thank
you. Okay. I felt like I was like at a Stop and Shop or something. You know what I mean? So, I think that a lot of people, especially from the community, feel that the church is just about money. We do have some churches that preach prosperity preaching. I don't understand, how that really works. But tell us about the money dynamic when it comes to the church.
One of the problems is how it's portrayed. When the church is portrayed to be a financial institution, then the church again has lost its identity, because it's not a financial institution.
Let me stop you right there. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, I'm sure you've heard this or you've seen this in the past, where the preacher or the pastor is driving a much, much better car than some of the people in the church, and people kind of like, the pastor's they automatically think the pastor's getting all the money out the church. Is that true?
No, it's not true. Some cases it could be, but I'm not familiar with I'm not a part of that circle that understands it from that way, because my friends, we're basically normal.
Okay.
You know, we actually celebrate our disciples or our members that do well. And the thing is, because we should be a representation of the church, you know, but the thing is, when it becomes extreme or in excess, it's a bad representation. Even if you can afford these things, it's still a bad representation because it disconnects people because you're showing them something that they can never aspire to because they do not have your position.
Right.
So it does look bad. And,
Right.
and pastors, we need to be more aware of these things rather than showing how prosperous we are. The thing is, no, how about showing how much humility you can obtain?
Right.
How about showing how meek and humble you really are? But many people believe that their pastors should drive great things because they feel that since I can't have it, I want him to have it or her to have it. My thing is, I'm fine with that. I can live with that. But as for me and my discipleship, we keep everything on the normal because I'm a part of the working class. I'm a part of the kid that came from the project. I'm a part of the real dynamic. And the thing about it is that I love to see it when it's broadband, when the pastor tries to benefit the disciples to do better. The disciples are pushing the pastor to do better, and therefore we're all in this thing together. So therefore there's no separation in that.
So, but you understand how some people can kind of have like a bad taste when the pastor's driving a Benz or Bentley and they taking a train.
I have a bad taste when I see certain times because the thing is that where's the labor? Where's the work? What message are you giving? How are you representing God with this? You see, you can have that fine, well and good, but when you're coming back to the people and driving by the sister at the bus stop with her 2 kids, you don't know how she's living, but yet you're rolling by her in an empty car, something's wrong there. When you're not making sure that they're getting home, but you are, something's wrong there. So the thing is that our responsibility is to empower a people. It is to lift up a people. It is to empower them, to give them the access, to utilize the church as a resource center that channels them and connects them into the different avenues and areas that helps them to enhance their lives, not so much just it being about the leadership. Because if it's all about the leadership, without the fellowship, there is no leadership. So this is something that they're not taking into consideration and something that they should.
I want to talk about something that's very personal to me, and I just want to share it with you. And I know you already know my brother died of AIDS. One of the things that hurt me the most is my mother was going to a church in East New York, and one of the people in the church, when my mother told them what her son was going through, that he was infected with the HIV and he was dying of AIDS, she told my mother that it was a sin against God. That's why he got AIDS. You know what I'm saying? And I felt that that was wrong because, if anything, you know, to be ignorant about something is not an excuse. And a lot of times I look at the church, and the church hasn't been as vocal speaking about AIDS and HIV and how it has impacted our community. They've been very silent. They don't even want to talk about it. And I want to know, what is your view and how do you deal with people in your congregant and your community that are dealing with this situation?
Okay, well, yesterday was World AIDS Day, and my church is a part of the National Black Leadership Commission Against AIDS and HIV. So we're on the front line when it comes to this. This is a black crisis. It is a part of the reality that we have to deal with. The church has to take off its blinders and see society for what it is. This disease is killing our community. And then for someone to demonize or to say that this is evil, then what does that make God? If you're trying to tell me God kills people, then something's wrong. If you're trying to proclaim the same God to be the God of all love, God cannot be two at the same time, because then God conflicts against himself. Christ even said a house divided cannot stand. So at the end of the day, the lack of information is killing people. And the Bible teaches us clearly that because of the lack of knowledge, people perish. We have to stop playing games. We have to open up our hearts and doors. We have to be realistic. I tell the disciples in my church, your little daughters, your little sons, they're getting busy. You know why? Because you did. So stop playing games. The same way we did what we did, our children are doing what they're doing. They look like little wonderful little angels around us. But when they leave us, they're making it happen. Get your children checked. Tell them about abstaining. Tell them about protection. Let's stop playing games and be more realistic about it. But when people get into the church, they don't want that in the church. That's part
of what I don't understand. Like, you know, how do you not deal with reality and in this sense of, you know, you pretty much put it on your blinders when it comes to everyday issues. But you're supposed to be the leader of a people, or you're supposed to be shepherding the people.
See, that's it again. That's just absolute ignorance. It is just absolute ignorance when you're trying to, well, don't look over there. It's not going to bother me. You want to leave it alone until it comes in your house. Then when it comes in your house, now you want to be the poster child for the situation. No, the reality of the black community is to be engaged and be more preventive, to be a people that are prepared to challenge it. One of the great writers, Heifetz, said that what the church should be, it should be an institution that mobilizes people to tackle tough challenges, not run away from it, but to tackle tough challenges and not survive, but to thrive. Which means when the AIDS epidemic comes, just like we just had the economic crisis with real estate, we had, we've had the crack epidemic, we've had all of these things, and the church did the same thing. They covered their eyes, we prayed, oh Lord, we demonized everyone that fell victim to it until it came into people's houses. When we saw these things, we should have got the information. We should have went down to the Department of Health. We should have went down to find out about the crack epidemic. We should have found out about the real estate issues. We should go and find out what's up so that we can deal with it, so that we can thrive even in the midst of it. And until this begins to happen, until we begin to utilize the information that's available, we're always going to continue to perish.